Hi everyone, it's Nicole. Welcome to another card making video tutorial. Today we are going to be creating some cards using the Altenew August 2023 release. This is a product showcase, so I'm showing more product than specific techniques, and I have lots of fun things to share with you. All of my cards today feature brand new stamps, dies, and stencils from that August 2023 release. First up, we are going to create this beautiful beachy scene here with the Caribbean Life layering stencils. And I'm gonna grab my stencils and kind of look at the stencils first, I guess is what I want to say. And I'm going to build my background scene before I pull in my dies and build the scene on top of this. Now, if you have watched me for any length of time, you know that one of my absolute favorite kind of cards to create is a scene card. So two of my cards today are scene cards, starting with this set. If you love creating water scene type cards, this layering stencil set is fantastic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build from the bottom up for this one, and this is a 4-piece stencil. 3 of the pieces kind of build more of the water and the beach or the sand, and then the 4th stencil is going to create the layered clouds that you can add as many or as few to the sky that you want. I started down at the bottom and I inked up the sand with some cappuccino, Simon Says Stamp Positively Saturated ink. No, pardon me, latte. And then I'm using cappuccino for that little line there in the sand where it's made to look darker, like the water, the tide has made the water come up onto the sand, or further into the sand, I guess I want to say, on the beach. Next, we are going to build the water. I've got some seafoam ink here, and we are going to ink this. I love that it gives us a beautiful horizon line. This is great because this is going to help us build the sky and that horizon line, so we can add our sailboat and our lighthouse and seagulls and all the things. I'm even going to pull up that seafoam ink very, very lightly into the white portion of the background of my card. Next, we are going to add the layering for the water. I'm going to do this with surf and ocean inks, respectively. So surf first and then ocean. Background building is always one of the most important things I think you can do for any kind of scene card. I also think this particular stencil set can be used in so many ways. Now, we of course will be using the Caribbean Dreams die set, made to work perfectly with this, but really look at the supplies in your stash. If you're just looking for a great scene building set, both of these are actually fantastic and probably can be used with other things that you have already in your stash. Now, the stamp wheel is fantastic, of course, for holding your paper and your die or stencil in place while you are working. I can almost not stencil without it anymore, you guys. It's so fantastic. So now we're going to build our clouds. With this, I've got some flannel, and I was going to use the Earl Grey color for my shading, but I think we're just going to stick with the flannel color. I'm going to tap off some of that ink. Even at that, it was still a little dark. I'm using the ink cubes, and I think these have more ink on them than my regular sized ink pads. But I'm going to add my clouds to the sky. Remember, as the ink dries and is absorbed into the cardstock, it should lighten a little bit. These kind of look like storm clouds. They got a little bit dark. That first one especially. However, I really like how it looks, and I think it adds to the overall look and feel. So my base color is flannel. My layering color, also going to be flannel. I'm just going to use a little heavier hand, or maybe a little extra ink. This is a great way if you don't want to add a lot darker color. You can always just do the same color, tone on tone. Now, once we have this, I have lots of components to build the rest of my scene. And I know I made mention of this. We're using the Caribbean Dreams die set. This die set comes with the sailboat, the lighthouse, seagulls. Those are the things I'm using today. There's also a shell with a pearl and some dolphins. Those are the things I did not use in today's card. Some of them have layering pieces, some do not. I die cut all of the pieces for this. Some from cardstock, the sailboat, the main part of the sailboat, and then the top of the lighthouse and the seagulls. But then the sail on the sailboat and the lighthouse itself and the rocks, those were die cut from pattern paper. And I just used some pattern paper scraps in my stash. It takes hardly anything. These pieces are not very big. I always keep all those little parts and pieces of scraps of my pattern paper, because you never know when they're going to come in handy for something like this. So that is what those were die cut from. And I don't even know if that pattern paper is still available. I highly suggest looking through your stash, seeing what you have and what will work. I picked something that looked kind of like a fabric for the sail and something that looked like rock for my lighthouse and the beach, or that little rock formation that the lighthouse is sitting in. For my seagulls, I did take some Earl Grey and flannel inks, and I inked up only portions of the seagulls. Now, I know it looks a little harsh at the moment. Remember though that it will soften as that ink dries. Look at our background already. I'm going to take some of that cappuccino ink and I'm going to ink up the edges of my sails for my sailboat, just to deepen and darken those a little bit. We will be doing this for the lighthouse pattern paper pieces as well. It's always, I forget about my pattern paper. Do you guys do that as well? I think it's fantastic to kind of dive back into your pattern paper bin or storage sometimes when you're making cards and see what you can use from that will help tell the story without having to maybe add that texture yourself. I love that. It really made creating this card much quicker and easier. So we're going to glue the boat kind of along the horizon line there, and then we're going to glue our seagulls around that flying in the sky. I do have my lighthouse laid out onto my card, plus a greeting, so I really have a good idea of where everything is going to go on this card before I glue it all down. Now there is a lot of soft colors is what I would call them here. Soft blues, neutral tones of grays and browns. The top of the lighthouse is providing us a beautiful little pop of color that just gives a very soft and serene feel to this. The lighthouse is 4 pieces: the top of the lighthouse and the rock it sits on, and then 2 layering pieces for the rock. We're going to shift it down from the horizon line just a tad, and then we're going to adhere it slightly off the left side of the panel. We're going to glue the top of the lighthouse right there, just like so. I think it would even be pretty if you could stencil some light coming from this. Maybe you're doing a nighttime lighthouse scene or something to that effect. I think that would be cool. And then we're going to layer the rocks along the bottom. And this scrap I used was only about 2 by 6 inches. And obviously these pieces are tiny. There's still pattern paper left, but I loved it because it looked kind of rocky and almost like brick or something, and it just gave that perfect look for this card. So now I am going to stamp my greeting, and I chose a greeting from the brand new Rainforest Leaves Wreath Builder. Instead of using black ink, I am going to use a blue ink. This is Nichol from Hero Arts. I felt like it tied in to the soft navy of the cardstock of my sailboat. And then I'm going to flip my panel over and trim off anything hanging off the edges. Look at that. It's so beautiful. Okay, then I'm going to finish off that little pop of red on my card with a little red heart accent. Glue this to a white card base, and we are ready to move on to card number 2. For card number 2, we are using the Wood Cookie die set. Now this is a big die set, and it's a layering die set. I love it that it looks like a little tree stump and then a ladybug. I've die cut all of my components from smooth white cardstock, and I'm inking with latte, mocha, or latte, cappuccino, and mocha inks. And then we're going to layer these together. You could also die cut these from 3 different shades of brown or neutral cardstock instead of doing ink blending. I didn't exactly have all of the colors that I wanted for this, and so I felt like it was easier to add my own color. There's a lot of different ways that you could achieve that same look. Let's get rid of all those little parts and pieces. I actually inked up the center part of my wood stump first and then removed all of the inside pieces. The ladybug is going to be assembled with black glossy cardstock, schoolhouse red cardstock, and some pearlescent vellum. And then we're going to build out from there. Now this is a prominent feature on the card, meaning it takes up a good portion of a standard A2 size card base. And I think there's a lot of ways to embellish this. You could use it very simply on its own with a simple greeting, or you can do what I'm going to do, and that is pull in other brand new elements or products from this release and add some greenery. I felt like it really needed greenery for this card. Now you can see it pieces together super easy, so I'm going to go ahead and glue that all together, and then we'll glue our ladybug together. But the greenery today is coming from Rainforest Leaves Wreath Builder. That's what we just grabbed our greeting from for the first card, and we're actually going to grab that same greeting. I really like it. I like the text, I like the sentiment, I like the size. It's fantastic. And I think it works for a lot of occasions. We're going to grab that greeting from there as well, but we're going to grab the layering leaves from this, and then we're also going to use the Delicate Palms hot foil set and dies for adding that soft feature to our card. Now I glued down just the tip of my pearlescent vellum to the glossy black, and then I'm going to add my red wings here on top. I love the layers for this, and you will notice how amazing this little lady looks on the wood stump, and then you add in the greenery and it is just perfection. Oh my gosh, how cute is that? So I'm going to grab some white cardstock, and we are going to stamp all of these leaves from our Rainforest Leaves Wreath Builder. I've got 5 different colors of green ink that I am going to kind of mix and match to create the effects, or the different green color combinations, I should say, for my card today. So I have Sprout, Fairway, and Field, which is a green ink trio from Simon Says Stamp. And then I've also got Sage and Pine, which is from a different trio, but we're just using those 2 colors. And I'm going to use different combinations of those colors to build all of my leaves today. I wanted a little bit of a variety for my greenery. Both of the base colors here are Sprout, but then one of the layering colors is going to be Fairway, and over the other leaf, it's going to be Field. And you'll see that just that gives a little bit different color and effect for these different leaves. Because the leaves are different, you could stamp multiple of the same one, but I wanted to do most of them in this stamp set, if not all. I loved to kind of just give different color combinations that all look together or look beautiful together when you add them to your card design. So there's one more layering, and then there's a couple of single, more leafy, viney looking ones. I'm going to stamp this one in Fairway and blend in some Field. You can still blend in some. I'm going to tap on a little bit of the Field ink. I found that this didn't give me quite a dark enough shading that I wanted, so I'm just going to tap it on and then blend out the edges with my blending brush. And I like that. I think that looks good. And then I am going to use, like I said, Sage and Pine for this last layering leaf. And then we'll stamp the final leafy branch with the pine color before we grab our Glimmer hot foil system and foil the beautiful delicate palms. I love this. If you like creating any kind of tropical rainforest vibe leaf, to me, these cards all just say summer. And I know that we're starting to see a lot of fall and Halloween and Christmas product come out, but I really love that this release still says summer. And it was really kind of refreshing, especially when we get to this last card, it's refreshing to use products that are kind of in season. I guess that's what I want to say. I'm going to use the coordinating dies to die cut all of these leaves. And something I do want to mention that is amazing about Altenew, there are no tabs on these dies. That means that you don't have to cut them apart. And I know, and you know, cutting dies apart is probably not your favorite if you're like me. It's not my favorite. I jab myself at least once a week on those little, tabs. And so when dies come untabbed and I don't have to do that extra work, I love it. Now, I felt like my background was a little plain, so I am adding some Fairway and Field inks really lightly, although not so lightly there, but luckily that's going to get covered up with my big tree stump. To my background panel, I didn't take it all the way to the edge. I just want more the illusion of green. And then I'm going to kind of plan out how it's going to look. Tuck some of the leaves back behind, some on top. You can see I've got my die for Have a Beautiful Day in the center of the tree stump so I can gauge the size of my sentiment. Make sure that's what I want to use before I commit to it. And I didn't use the die on the first card, but for this one we are going to die cut. Obviously the top layer of our tree stump is textured because it's that textured die cut image. And if you stamp on it, it's not going to give you a smooth image. Now, I thought I would be super clever and I would stamp Have a Beautiful Day without using my MISTI. It didn't work out. So I stamped it off camera with my MISTI and die cut it. Now we have our Glimmer hot foil system warming up. I've got the delicate palms. I'm going to use all three of them, I think. I really want to fill in all the area on my card, and I probably could have stamped more leaves and filled all the way around. Because that Rainforest Leaves Wreath Builder is kind of designed, and one of the other great things about Altenew is that they always give you like idea sheets in their products. You can see different ideas for using the leaves to create some wreaths. I foiled these delicate palms with gold foil on hammer mill cardstock. They foiled beautifully and perfectly the first time. I have to say, not all foil plates are created equally. I have great luck, obviously, with Spellbinder's foil plates, but Altenew has not let me down. Their foil plates are fantastic. And now I'm going to put it together. So I'm only going to put a little liquid glue in the center of my tree stump. That way it's going to allow me to be able to easily tuck leaves and things around the edges of this on my card. I'm going to center it, just eyeballing it here in the center, and then we're going to build out from there with all of our leaves. And as I mentioned, I am going to put some kind of on top and tuck the rest underneath the edge. They will hang off the edge a little bit. That's okay. In fact, I'm going to repurpose one of the little tips of one of the delicate palm leaves to use kind of around the edge of my design, and I'll show you that here in just a minute. So just lift up a little bit, and we want to build the look of this kind of outdoor scene with our little lady. Once I have all my leaves in place, I'm going to put foam adhesive on the back of my sentiment and pop that up right in the center of my tree stump. We're going to pop up the ladybug right next to it, or kind of sitting on a leaf, I guess I want to say. And then we're going to trim off any of the excess hanging off the edges of our card. And I like to flip it over and come at it from the back. Oh, you got to remove the backing paper from the foam there. And I love the pop of red. Oops, and you got to glue down the elements if you want them to stay put. So I'm going to flip this over and snip off the extra. And I've got quite a big tip here, that little piece that just came off. I'm going to save that. So I want to glue down this big one. And then that other little tip, I think I'm going to pull down towards the bottom, which is one of my favorite things to do, is if you have excess leaves or flowers or whatever element, if it's big enough, you can often save those pieces to use either on other projects, other cards, or use it like I'm going to here, kind of coming in from this side. And I like that. I'm going to glue this to a white top fold card base, and this card is also all finished. Oh no, I did add a few pearls. I decided to grab some pistachio Pretty Pink Posh pearls and scatter them throughout for a little additional added texture. I thought about adding a heart and I just didn't feel like this card needed it. I know you guys are wondering what happened to all of my hearts. The other two cards have them. So we're all good. Nothing has changed. But I like this addition of some little green pearls. I love these little triangle trays for being able to work with. An embellishment wand also comes in so super handy if you have lots of little parts and pieces to work with. And this little pearl kept getting away from me. I add little dabs of glue and then I simply pop my pearls down in place with my embellishment wand. I usually just do about 2 or 3 drops of glue at a time. I have found sometimes if I do more than that, I lose track of where I've added the glue, and sometimes I forget to add my embellishment to that area. For our last card today, we are going to focus on the Zesty Life. This is a collection of wonderful lemon products. We're going to use the Lemon Craze layering stencils and then the Zesty Life stamp and die set, which also does have some layering stencils that work with it. I didn't use those today. I just used the Lemon Craze layering stencil background builder stamp set. Now, what I wanted to share here is how amazing this looks stenciled on a colored cardstock background. In this case, Craft, which you guys know is my favorite. This is the Nina Desert Storm craft colored cardstock, and Distress Oxide has some pigment ink in it, and it is wonderful for stenciling on a colored cardstock. So I've used some fossilized amber here for my first layer. We're going to layer on top of this Rustic Wilderness for the greenery, and then we're not going to use ink for the rest of our stenciling today, but instead we're going to use some glaze or paste from Picket Fence. I'm going to use Aztec sunflowers and then turquoise jewelry. How fun are those names? But the last stencil for this layering stencil background set adds the highlight to the lemons, and then it adds like some little dots and interest to the background. And I'm going to use 2 different colors of paste here. One note, if you are using paste of any kind, make sure you go clean your stencil immediately. You are going to want to get that off as quick as possible. My biggest suggestion is, or advice, I suppose, is to have a scrubber brush. I have a scrubber brush in my kitchen, and I scrub my stencils with that to remove the paste, and it removes probably 99% of the paste. So and clean it immediately. If you can't, have a tray or something with a little water in it that you can dump your stencils and your tools in, so that it doesn't harden to the fact or to the point where you cannot get it off your stencil. So you can see I'm using the tip of my palette knife to apply that Aztec sunflowers color, and even though it's very close to the fossilized amber, it adds it has a little glitz and glimmer to it, a little bit of glitter, and it looks amazing on the lemon. It really adds that highlight, and it looks incredible. I love the texture that paste adds. Now the turquoise jewelry color is going to add a pop of color to this design. In addition to my paste, I'm also going to take some white gouache and we are going to splatter the background to add a little bit more interest. I love that this looks like pattern paper. So we were talking about pattern paper earlier in the video. Creating my own is my favorite. So I've got some white gouache. I'm going to add a couple of squirts of water to it. That just helps it move a little better in my opinion. And I am going to start splattering my background with this, and I used a pretty heavy hand here. You can use as much or as little as you want, and my personal preference, what I find works best is, for me, is tapping on something else. So I've got my piercing tool and that works good. Okay, the very last thing for this card, I mean, it couldn't be any easier. We are going to stamp greetings from Zesty Life on craft cardstock to coordinate. I have got another piece of Craft Nina Desert Storm cardstock. We're going to stamp "Have a Zesty Birthday." There's lots of fun greetings here. There's greetings for all of the more scripty, bigger sentiments. Any of the small words, there's not. I'm going to use sentiment label dies to die cut these, or you can use your paper trimmer to cut those into little strips, or even your scissors. I'm going to stamp mine with black ink and then die cut the word zesty, die cut my little words into sentiment strips, and pop everything up onto my card with foam adhesive. The foam just helps pop out those greetings a little bit from the background and make them even easier to read. With a card with a background like this, I don't feel like it needs a ton of extra stuff. So we're going to let the background be the focal point and just kind of embellish that, if you will, with our greetings. Now, I did have a little black heart. This is just a little black clay heart, and I could have used any color here, but I found this actually sitting on my desk, or it was sitting on my foam sheet. And as I was looking, it's been there for weeks. I thought, you know, it really ties into the black ink that I used for the sentiment. So let's use that for our card and glue that down below. I felt like it was just the perfect finishing touch. And even though this is a fairly flat design, with the exception of our greetings and our little heart embellishment, the fact that we used paste for the highlights on the lemons and for the little blue dots in the background makes that look like it is dimensional, because it is as well. So super easy, super quick. You could ink up a ton of these in no time flat and have loads of cards ready to go. Here is a look at all 3 of my finished card designs using brand new products from the Altenew August 2023 release. The supplies I used are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining me today for another paper crafting tutorial. I love being able to share with this incredible community of crafters. I want to give a huge shout out and special thank you to my amazing Patreon members. If you're interested in joining Patreon, please click the link in the description underneath the video here on YouTube. Patreon is a private community where you can support more of what I do. There's exclusive content. You'll receive a handmade birthday card from me during your birthday month, monthly lives for my top tier patrons, and more. We would love to have you join our growing community. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel, click the like button, and don't forget to click the notification bell so you're always notified when I have a video or go live. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you again next time.